Prime Minister, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How lovely to see you.
Very good to be here.
Welcome to Test Match Special.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm sorry about the weather. I suspect you might have had more entertainment sitting through the Brexit reading, mightn't you, rather than this? But what a miserable day.
Well, it is a miserable day, and it's unfortunate, obviously, that we've only had very limited cricket here. But look, I mean, we're sitting here looking at this rain, but at least we're not in the Caribbean at the moment. When we see the terrible devastation of that hurricane that's gone through, and another one coming through as well.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I've just been able to be talking to somebody whose family are out in Antigua, and actually sort of hearing firsthand what it's like and the steps they've had to take.
What are they saying? I mean, it really is devastating.
It is devastating, absolutely devastating. And obviously we've sent one of our Royal Fleet auxiliary ships, Mounts Bay, was out there. We pre-positioned it. It's moved to the British Virgin Islands today. It was in with Anguilla. And it'll be sending back more information about what's happening. And as a result of that, I'll be chairing a Government Emergency Committee, our COBRA committee, this afternoon, to look to see what extra help we can give.
What can you do? I mean, you look at the pictures, it's just a terrible mess, isn't it?
Well, there's the immediate response, and obviously we've had people on the ground. We've had RAF Mounts Bay out there. Two RAF planes have taken off from Brize Norton with further supplies and personnel now. We've got Royal Marines and Army Engineers on Mounts Bay. So there's the immediate issue of coping with what is happening to people and trying to and supporting people. Then there's the longer term reconstruction that will be necessary, and as we've all seen from the terrible photographs, I mean, it's and the pictures of what's happened, it's absolutely devastating. I think people have just everything for some people has just been destroyed.
I know. Another one on the way, isn't there, they say?
There's another one on the way.
Yeah.
Obviously Irma is due to hit the Turks and Caicos as well, and Jose, the next hurricane, is on the way. These are absolutely devastating in the impact they've had on the islands, but also on people's lives. And here we are. There'll be people here supporting the West Indies, people supporting England. I'm sure everybody here has at the back of their mind the terrible devastation and the impact that that hurricane has had. And once, we want to do everything we can, and will do everything we can to support people, but also to help them rebuild.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Actually, I was watching on the telly last night the last Prime Minister that I interviewed, Gaston Brown, from Antigua, who came on, I think, the last time we were there. He was last seen disappearing into the party stand at the old recreation ground in Antigua with his shirt unbuttoned. He's quite a character, so I guess he's got a lot of work on his plate at the moment too. But
they all have. Yes, they all have. It's always very difficult. I think a lot of work was done to prepare people when they knew these hurricanes were coming. People have been boarding up their windows, getting in supplies and so forth. But this is continuing, of course, with the next one coming. And as I say, we've got to help with people rebuild their lives.
Indeed. Well, welcome to TMS, Prime Minister. You have. I'm glad to see you have brought an offering.
I have indeed. So yes. Made by my own fair hands.
Well, I was going to ask this. I was going to ask you were pottering around the kitchen last night.
I was indeed. Yes.
Good. Well done. To later, your husband's. He's nodding his head. So you were there. Well, made by a fair hand.
Yes.
Can you reveal what they are?
Yes. It
won't be a fanfare, but
it is indeed chocolate brownies. Chocolate brownies, which I hope will be
very nice. To a secret recipe of any type, or
no? I don't know. As this is on the BBC, I'm not sure if I'm able to reveal which cook actually recipe I use.
That depends. They seem to transfer a bit, so you might be all right.
Well, it's Nigel Slater's brownies recipe. Yes.
Excellent.
Yes. Yes.
Well, we'll look forward to those.
I have tried actually I have made brownies for TMS before. Once when Geoffrey Boycott invited me up to Headingley, I brought some brownies up and handed them to Geoffrey, but I don't know whether they ever made it into the TMS
I never saw them.
Box.
I never saw them.
Well, all I will say is that Geoffrey Boycott's still got my Tupperware.
Has he?
Yes.
Well, you've got no chance of saying that. Goodness sake, he won't give you that back again. But I'm glad you got the priorities right, that you're pottering around in the evening making brownies a Test Match special rather than running the country. Much more important, I think. Now, you obviously are
I'm
aware...
a woman, I can multitask and do the both at the same time.
Well, touche, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Now, but your knowledge, therefore, of Test Match special, but of cricket particularly, obviously runs quite deep if you're giving that sort of commitment to the programme and to the game. Let's start with your cricket first of all. And when did you first become aware of the great game?
Well, there's no sort of light bulb moment. It was always on. My father was a great cricket fan, and he was a clergyman, so he worked from home quite a lot. And so TMS used to be on in the background. And although we often used to do that thing of, television on, sound down,
yes.
and listen to Test match special commentary. So I can't say that on this date I suddenly realised that recognised cricket, but I just grew up with cricket around.
Yes, and the voices, presumably.
And the voices, indeed, yes.
Brian Johnston and
Brian Johnston, well, further back, John Arlott.
Yes, you're predating me, really.
Just a little bit.
Yes, but it's the way of conveying the game, I suppose, that captures people, isn't it?
It is, and of course, the great thing is when you're, as you are on Test Match Special, talking through the whole of the match, everything that's happening. As I say, some people have in the past been able to have the television on and then and listen to it, but for a lot of people, what they see of the game is what they hear of the game from you. But it's not just the game, is it? It's everything around it as well.
Characters
it's
involved.
The characters, it's the atmosphere.
Yes. Did you ever try and play?
No, I've never played.
Not even in the garden with your dad?
Well, in a little bit of what we used to call French cricket. I had a little bat and he sort of threw a ball at me and I tried to hit it.
But not any...
But not serious cricket.
Okay.
No.
But you obviously got involved in the game because I was reading about your connection with Benazir Bhutto, for instance, which is an amazing story, if you're going to back it up. I mean, I do trust most of my sources on this. But Benazir Bhutto, former Prime Minister of Pakistan, introduced you to your husband.
Indeed, yes.
Based on your mutual love of cricket. And I'm talking about yours and Benazir Bhutto's mutual love of cricket, not merely your husband's. Is that right?
It is certainly correct that Benazir introduced me to Philip, who is then to become my husband.
Yes.
I think it would be probably more accurate to say that it came from a mutual love of politics, because it was in a sort of at what was essentially a political event that she introduced us. When we were both up at Oxford University.
But she obviously knew that your love of cricket was mutual then.
Well, I think so. Yes.
Yeah. She must be an extraordinary woman. I mean, and when she assassinated like that, it must have like you very hard.
Well, it was a huge shock. Yes. I mean, and it was at the time. I remember because Philip and I we literally just turned on the television when it had happened and suddenly saw the news. And it is devastating when somebody who you've been at university with, you've seen, there were ups and downs in her political career, obviously, but had been Prime Minister of Pakistan, and just like that is no longer with us, no longer able to do what she wanted to do.
Yeah. Is it a reminder of how dangerous politics can be? Particularly perhaps if you're a woman, I don't know, but does that make it even more difficult, more resonant perhaps?
Well, I think what's important in politics is that you don't think of those aspects of it. You think simply of what you want to do, what you want to achieve, how you want to help people. But it can be quite difficult for women. Quite a few of my female colleagues have told stories in the recent election campaign of some of the harassment they were getting, particularly on social media. And obviously there've been some profile cases. One Labour MP who actually, the person harassing her on social media was prosecuted, and the police looked into that. So that sort of atmosphere of people feeling they can do that, particularly to women politicians, is very difficult.
Yes, that's on my list. I want to move on to that. I'm going to deal with cricket first of all. Prime Minister Tony Gray. Now that's the name that I thought linked Benazir Bhutto and you. This very tall, handsome Trinidad fast bowler. And that was something that ran through this introduction with the cricket. Is that false information somewhere?
I'm afraid
he's not a Surrey fast bowler.
There wasn't an obvious
Philip
connection.
Scratching his back of his head there. Tony Gray. No, Tony Gregg maybe.
Well, I was going to say Tony Gregg.
Maybe they misspelt it. So was Tony Gregg a bit of an icon?
Tony Gregg was yes.
Okay.
When he was
And Geoffrey Boycott was certainly.
Yes.
I mentioned that name with some trepidation. What was your admiration? I wasn't going to say attraction. Admiration for Geoffrey Boycott.
The fact that he just stuck in there and got on with the job. I think that was the great thing.
Didn't he bore you to tears while you were watching or listening?
No, but the whole point was he stuck at it.
Right.
And he very carefully had a plan, and he just got on with it, and more often than not delivered.
Yeah. Did you ever go and see him? Did you ever see him play, or was this purely conveyed by radio? TV?
I've only ever seen him play on television and heard it on the radio. I've never actually seen him play live.
No. But if you're giving him some brownies, you must have some affection for him somehow.
Well, as I say, the Brownies were intended for the TMS team.
Yes.
It was Geoffrey who took them. So
Yes. Okay. So, any other memories of cricket then? I mean, where you were? I mean, how can you still follow it now? I mean, here you are here today, after all, and you've picked a bad one to come. But can you still keep up to date with?
it's much harder. It's much harder. Although I have to confess that when I was on the plane out to Japan, we did get the result of the second test sent through to us.
Oh, did you?
That
wouldn't have cheered you up too much.
Well, but that was, I thought that actually showed one of the great attractions of cricket, which is that, through that whole it was going one way and then the other, and it was that fascination for it. But I'm not able to see much these days, I'm afraid.
No.
And there's not a lot of time to keep up with it.
Yeah, but you had the women's team, I think, to 10 Downing Street, didn't you?
I did
recently?
indeed,
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, that must have pleased you.
Fantastic victory that they had.
Yes.
Absolutely wonderful.
Do they behave themselves? It didn't repeat the men's when they won the Ashes in 2005, I hope, in Tony Blair's garden.
No, well, I wasn't in Tony Blair's garden in 2005, but I was in Trafalgar Square in 2005.
Were you really?
Watching the England team.
Were you? It must have
triumphant
been an
England
amazing
team.
day.
It was an absolutely incredible day. It was also the first time I'd ever physically seen the Ashes.
Oh.
Because I'd imagined this great big
Yes.
urn, and it's tiny.
Yes, they are. So you were there just as a fan, or just felt
Just
you
as
should
a
be
fan,
there?
but also at the time I was shadowing the Culture, Media and Sports department. So
Right.
a number of people with sort of relevant policy areas were also invited.
Yeah.
But as somebody who enjoys cricket, I was delighted to be able to.
I mean, I was there that day, and I think if you were there, you really felt gripped by it. And yet, some people sort of down the line have thought, "Oh, it was over the top. We shouldn't have done it," and so on. But there's nothing wrong with some patriotism, is there? I mean, that was basically
exactly.
what it was.
It was a great result, and it was great to say to the team, "Well done."
Yes.
And team certainly enjoyed themselves.
Yeah, but they did. You're starting a new season already, aren't you now? How have you gone about your off-season? Because it must have been a pretty low point at the end of the election and so on. How have you gone away and sort of pulled yourself back together again? I mean, we sort of add sporting things to this, but I mean, sportsmen lose confidence or whatever, and you've still got to stand up there and in the Commons and be in charge and present yourself in a confident sort of a way. How have you gone about turning over what's happened over the last couple of months?
Well, of course, the thing about politics is that there's, in a sense, that you're straight into it. After an election, you are straight into it. But what drove me at the time, immediately after the election, was the importance of the country having a government that could deliver. And what continues to drive me is actually delivering, because I think we've got a real job to do. And yes, there's Brexit, but actually there's more than that. It's about a country that genuinely does work for everyone. And it's about making the most of our opportunities for the future. And it's a feeling that there's still that job to be done that is so important.
Did you take it very personally, the election result? Did you feel it was sort of a personal statement from people or not? Did it hurt?
You have to. I mean, it is difficult to go into an election thinking, hoping, working for a particular result and then getting a different result. And as the leader of the party, of course, you have to look personally, take it to a degree personally, and you have to accept that responsibility.
Are you frustrated by it? I mean, did you feel that people saw the real you in the course of that campaign, or not? I mean, is that something you look back on and think, I didn't get that right?
You're always going to look back, and any election campaign, particularly one that has gone like that, you have to look back and say, what should we have done? What did we do that we shouldn't have done? What did we not do? Throughout my political career, I've always enjoyed this was a campaign like no other that I've ever had, because I've always enjoyed actually getting out there and knocking on doors and meeting people in the streets. And of course, as party leader and as Prime Minister, you tend to have a slightly different sort of campaign.
In what way, though?
Well, it's more meeting groups of people and obviously making a number of speeches, things like that.
Yeah, but did you feel that you were yourself? I mean, people I've spoken to, and I've obviously speak to people I know, journalists and so on, and say, "Oh, I've got Theresa May coming. What's she going to be like? Oh, get her away from the microphone. She's great fun. A real good giggle, good sense of humour, and so on." We never really saw that though. Then, and does that frustrate you?
I think it's Look, in any election campaign, you make a plan is made about what that campaign is going to be like. I think I get frustrated. People use the term robotic about me during that campaign.
That must hurt.
I don't think I'm in the least robotic. As I say, what I really enjoy is getting out there, talking to people, hearing from them, understanding what the issues are for them.
Yes.
That's what drove me when I first became Prime Minister and stood outside 10 Downing Street. I talked about a country that works for everyone. I talked about those people who do find life difficult.
And that resonated, actually, didn't it?
Yes, and that is what still drives me as Prime Minister.
Yes. So therefore, when you're repeating a phrase and people are calling you robotic, that must be, you must think, why?
Because there's something behind it. This is the important thing. It is genuinely, I do feel that there are people around parts of the country who feel that, perhaps decisions that politicians make, leave them behind, don't really help them, don't support them in the way that's necessary. And I want to ensure that we do, as a government, provide that support, that help for people. And there's a whole variety of ways in which we can do that. But some of the issues that I'm taking on board are things that have been left to one side for too long, not given the attention that, mental health, particularly among young people, hugely important issue for us. We really need to make sure that we're dealing with that.
Yes. And can you make the ground back? This is the question, really. I'm back on that confidence thing again, I suppose. How are you going to show that you are back in charge and that there is a side to you that perhaps we didn't see then? And or you're not going to, does it not bother you necessarily, or do you have to just simply be firm and strident and in charge and that's it?
I think the important thing for people is to see that the government is doing its job. And is delivering for them. And I think from the message I get from most people around, from members of the public, is they just want that. They want to know that they know the government's got a big job to do. They just want us to get on with it.
Yeah. What do you wish you'd known about being Prime Minister before you got the job? Is there any one thing that has taken you by surprise?
Gosh, of course, having been Home Secretary for 6 years, I'd worked with David Cameron, so I'd seen the job at fairly close quarters. So you see quite a lot of it. I think that there are some aspects of it that you don't see that are really, and these are really positive aspects of it. I mean, for example, I sign, and I presented one only earlier this week to a volunteer who raises funds for Crisis, the homelessness charity.
Right.
We provide every day of the year, a volunteer somewhere in the country will be identified as a point of light and given a certificate to recognise the difference they're making in their community. Now, I didn't know that happened,
No.
but it does. And it's great to be able to recognise people out there doing fantastic things who so often are never heard about.
It is nice that you can still actually spend time to make some brownies, though, in the evening. I'm just going to tell people it's lunch here, and it's raining at the moment, and the Prime Minister, Theresa May, is here. We're chatting away through the lunch break. We've got another 15 minutes or so, I hope, before you scurry off. Well, it's Cobra, isn't it?
It's Cobra,
it is.
yes.
That's much more important. Let me ask you, Prime Minister, how do you avoid, or perhaps not avoid, perhaps you encourage, but I suspect possibly avoid comparisons, inevitable comparisons with Mrs. Thatcher? I mean, did you ever meet her, and what were your thoughts of her?
I only ever met her very, very briefly. I met her very briefly a couple of times. So, obviously I've had some colleagues in the Commons who've known her very well, some who've worked with her, John Whittingdale, so PPS, for example. But I only ever met her very, very briefly on a couple of occasions.
Right.
And I try to, some people, inevitably, second female Prime Minister, some people will try to sort of talk about this.
Of course.
But there was only ever one Margaret Thatcher. I'm Theresa May, I do things in my way, and the circumstances of the government are different.
Yes. It's interesting because your voices sometimes when you're at the dispatch box sound quite similar, don't they? And a bit of finger waving and so on coming in that it sort of reminds us of a certain age of Mrs. Thatcher, I suppose. But there's absolutely no intention.
There's quite often a lot of finger waving in the Commons.
There is. I love that theatre, though. Do you enjoy it? Do you like getting in there and rolling your sleeves up and taking on PMQs?
Yes. I mean, the point is, everybody in the House of Commons has been elected to do a job. And of course, there are some passionately held views on different sides of the argument on different issues. And you get that sense, I think, in PMQs. I think the one thing I would say is that obviously an awful lot of other work goes on in the House of Commons that often people don't see. Often people will see PMQs. They won't see the very serious debates, lengthy debates that take place on issues of the day.
Is answer evasion the number one on the list?
No, answering in... I always remember, I think I will, if I may quote John Major, another great cricket
Absolutely.
fan. I always remember John Major saying to a group when he was talking to them once, he said, "You can ask me any question you like, as long as you don't mind me answering it the way I like."
Right. But it frustrates people, though, doesn't it? People go, "Oh, why don't you answer the living questions?"
But you do, I mean, very often, actually, you are answering the question, but you may not be giving the answer that the interviewer wants to hear.
Right.
And there's a difference between that. That's
Okay.
not answer evasion. That's just giving a different answer from the one the interviewer wants.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's fair. But I sit there and I don't know. I love the sort of the theatre of people getting very het up and so on. But I get a bit frustrated when it's the Geoffrey Boycott defence. The forward defensive block comes out, isn't it? That's the thing. You don't get.
Suited Geoffrey well.
Well, now let's move on because Geoffrey. I work with this individual who, as you know, he's unpredictable, he's awkward, he's outspoken, he takes to Twitter. But I can reach across, you see, like I can with you, and I can cut his microphone off. Now you can't do that with Donald Trump. How do you work with? How do you aim to work with him?
Well, you work with Donald Trump as any Prime Minister would work with any American president, which is it's about building a relationship. But the point is that the United Kingdom and the United States have a special relationship. It's been there for years, for decades, with a whole variety of prime ministers and presidents. But it's important that we have that relationship because it's important for our safety and security.
Yes.
And for the role that we're both able to play.
But is that
in the
regardless
world.
of who he is? I mean, can you just have to accept what there is there and try and work with it?
Well, you work with, and I've had some good, obviously I went to the United States and visited and had meetings with President Trump very shortly after he'd been inaugurated as president. And we had some good positive discussions there. For example, when I was there, he committed 100% to NATO. That's very important for the defence of Europe, for our defence and security, that he did that. Although previously in his campaign he'd made some less positive remarks about NATO,
Yes.
but I was able to talk to him and he committed 100% to it.
Yes.
So it's about having those discussions, talking through the issues.
Yes. The holding hands bit. Who held whose hand first?
It was, I'm very...
Did you clutch his hand first?
No, I'm very happy to tell the story because we were walking along and he said there was a ramp around the corner.
Right.
And it might be difficult walking down it, so to take his arm. And then when we got to the top of the ramp, he took my hand. Just for going down the ramp, and then that was it.
So
I
quite
think
the gentleman, actually.
I think it was to assist, yes.
Is it? Were you thinking at the time, oh dear, in terms of sort of photographs and...
No, I didn't realise... Well, I mean, you suddenly see this bank of photographers, and then,
Yes.
of course, it becomes something that the photographers and the journalists and the commentators and everybody picks up.
Yes.
But I think it was genuinely a moment of assistance.
Oh, well, that's nice to hear. Do you think the world's a safer place with him around?
I think there are quite a few challenges in the world at the moment. The role that America plays in keeping the world safe is very important.
Yes.
But obviously, with issues like the activities in North Korea at the moment...
Is that number
world
one on the list? I mean, I know with Brexit and all that sort of stuff, but do you think North Korea is number one on the list at the moment?
Well, the great thing about the job I do is that you can't just put your focus on one thing at any one time. You have to be aware of all the issues that you're dealing with. But certainly, I've just come back from a trip to Japan. Obviously, I went there literally just sort of hours or a day after the North Koreans had tested a missile, not the nuclear test, but had tested a missile across Japanese territory. So obviously, as you can imagine, a real concern there about that. Talking to Prime Minister Abe about how we, the United Kingdom, can work with Japan and the wider international community to put pressure on North Korea through sanctions, to change their behaviour.
Yeah. But do you think it'll work? I mean, can you? Do you wake up in the mornings like a lot of us do and open the paper, go on the internet and think, oh, have they let another one off or something? I mean, is it that pressing? Do you think?
I think that there is. It's important for the international community to work together at this time, and to be pressing North Korea, to be pressing China as well. Obviously, as the country that perhaps has most leverage in terms of North Korea.
Yeah. Do you trust Donald Trump, though, to not press the button or be reckless?
Yeah, I believe that that Donald Trump, as American president, will take the decisions that are right for security and safety around the world. He has very good advisors around him in some of the individuals that he has in key roles of state, defence, and so forth. And we will work with them.
Yeah, I mean, that's why, I mean, he will consult you think, and he's not going to go off and do something by himself.
We will work with him. I was talking to him earlier this week. I had a call with him earlier this week, talking exactly about North Korea, talking about what we can do together, particularly at the United Nations. There's key discussions at the Security Council of the United Nations, and how we can work with others around the world too, right. Other countries to achieve what we all want, which is for North Korea to stop what is illegal activity.
Yes. I've got 10 minutes with you. Could you talk about, you touched on social media, I think. It is something that we all get affected by. It doesn't matter what job you do. There's a very positive side of social media, and you were very kind to ask about my wife earlier, and sort of the massive support that she's had, because we kind of took the decision to put it out there. We think we had to. And it's incredible when social media works positively. It's very warm and it's very supportive. However, there is, as we all know, this very dark side to it. It's very easy for people to be deeply unpleasant to other individuals these days, and clearly in politics you've had that. Do you worry about where we're going? There is a situation where people really can unleash such venom. And I suppose in your case, I mean, would you worry about a woman like you sort of going into politics now and the sort of the hostility that there is out there?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. Of course, social media is hugely positive.
Yes.
In most of the ways that people will use it. But there is this aspect to it that does enable people to harass others, to make really very unpleasant comments and beyond unpleasant comments.
Yes, real
and
threats.
Real threats, and that's why it's important. And the Crown Prosecution Service recently issued some new guidance on prosecutions of online harassment and threats online and so forth. And I think it's important that action is taken when it's right, when it's past the level that is appropriate in terms of criminality and prosecutions. The other aspect of social media, though, that does worry me, and I did touch on it earlier, is the impact that it has on the mental health of young people.
Yes.
Young people who find themselves being harassed on social media and often find it very difficult to disassociate themselves from, because everybody uses social media. And, if you stop using it, then you become unusual.
Yes.
So people carry on using it, but often find that this is having an impact on them. And we're doing more to try and to train staff in schools to be aware of mental health problems, to be able to recognise them and know how to deal with those. And I went to a school in Bristol some weeks ago and just sat down with a small group of students there, it was a secondary school, who had suffered from mental health problems, who were being terribly brave in speaking about this, raising awareness of it. But social media was one of the issues that they raised that made life difficult for them.
It is education, really, isn't it? It's about teaching kids that this is not the way to behave. It's like being naughty in a playground. It's being the same as being unpleasant on a computer, isn't it?
Well, I think that's you've hit on one of the approaches that we need to take, and I think that's important to take in relation to criminal activity as well, which is to say if it's a crime offline, it's a crime online.
Yes.
I think sometimes people think that online is a different sort of world, and that it doesn't matter, and you can do whatever you like. Actually, no, you can't. You should behave online as you would offline.
Yes, yeah. But it does concern you. I mean, it's a growing phenomenon, a growing concern, the way that people behave on there.
Well, it is, because of some of the incidents that we've seen, of the genuine problems that it can cause. As I say, the mental health aspect that it has. Of course, there are wider issues of the use of the internet that we look at as government. And particularly when we're looking at the issue around extremism, dealing with terrorists, for example, the importance of working with companies so that material that can incite people basically to go out and commit a terrorist attack is not available. We need to do more work with the companies on that.
Okay. I suppose one or two of the last thought. Oh, actually, I was just saying here at the Somerset Cricket, Peter Trigo was talking about the abuse that he's been getting. It's not just politicians, is it? I mean, he said here to send professional athletes who are giving their best abusive messages is an absolute disgrace. And unfortunately, I think it's a little bit en vogue at the moment for young people to feel that it's okay to do that. That kind of reflects what we're saying, doesn't it?
Yes, it's. I think this is it. You've got people who will be just getting on, doing their job, and other people feel that it doesn't matter. It's almost as if they forget that there's a person on the receiving end of it.
Because they're not really there, are they?
Because they're not, because it's just firing it into this ether. You have to remember there's somebody at the other end of it.
Yeah. They're clearing up here, which is good news. What time are you rushing off, Prime Minister?
I'm afraid I have to go straight back now to Downing Street to obviously hear about the latest information from the Caribbean, but then chair the Cobra. Right,
OK. So have you seen any play at all?
I've seen about half an hour's play, yes. Yes, but awful. There we are.
I must ask, because there's been speculation, obviously, about your future and so on, and you're saying I'm not a quitter. Did you feel that you had to say that? I mean, you couldn't really say I'm a quitter, could you? I mean, was that something that just you were in one of those situations where you just had to say it?
But I'm not a quitter. I mean, I think it wasn't just a question. It's I think, hopefully a reflection of somebody who feels that there is a job to be done, and that I and the government are getting on and doing it. And I think that's what the public are looking to us to do as the government, just deliver for them.
What's it like at work, wandering through the corridors there at the Commons? I mean, are you wondering what people are saying? Are you aware of sort of your own party, I don't know, building up any sort of resistance or anything like that? Do you feel a bit like, watch your back?
Look, all through my political career, I've taken the view that actually, whatever job you're in, what you should do is get on, give of your best, do the best job you can. I have a hugely privileged position in being Prime Minister, but there are some huge challenges for the country, and my job is to make sure that we actually address those, that we deal with them properly, that we get the answers right, and that we deliver for people. And I'm in politics because I want to make a difference to people's lives. I want to improve people's lives. That's what drives me.
Yeah. Do you enjoy it? Every morning you get up with a bound and here we go, we're off to go and do save the world or something. I mean, do you really get energised by that every day?
I do enjoy it because it's and you're energised by the fact that it's so important, and by the fact that I genuinely do want to deliver a country that works for everyone.
I've got a question here from my producer. We've got a Cricket World Cup in England just after Brexit in 2019. Will it be an opportunity to show that Britain is open for business? And it is. It's a big summer.
It will be a big summer, and there you are, a great event that will indeed show that we're open for business. And we're forging new friendships around the world, working with new partners around the world, building, enhancing our some of our long-standing links, like my trip to Japan. But there we are. That will be showcasing Britain for the world.
OK, excellent. Prime Minister, it's lovely to have met you. Thanks for coming in. Thanks to the Brownies. They'll be tested officially a little bit later on. But good luck this afternoon. I hope you come up with some good decisions for all those in the Caribbean.
Thank you. Yes, some important decisions to take.
Lovely to have met you.